Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Record PowerPoint with Camtasia. My name is Jason Valad, and I'm an instructional designer and master trainer here on our customer education team at TechSmith, and I'll be your host today. Today's presentation is approximately 45 minutes long, and we will end our today's session with a Q&A, question and answer period, to try and answer as many of your questions as possible. Joining me today is my friend and coworker, Ryan Aish, who's an instructional designer here in our customer education team. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
It's going well, Jason. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks so much. So Ryan's going to be your presenter today, and he's going to be taking you through all things Camtasia and PowerPoint, as well as sharing many helpful tips along the way. Ryan is going to be working from a Windows PC today and using Camtasia 2021, the newly released version we released back in April. If you're using an older version of Camtasia, or you happen to be on the Mac platform today, it's absolutely fine. And we'll be sure and try and call out any major differences that come along as we do it.
All right. So let me go ahead and launch Camtasia here. So the goal for today's session is to walk you through a recommended workflow. This is something that the workflow that I typically use when recording PowerPoint with Camtasia. So I kind of want to walk you through from start to end, kind of what that workflow looks like. And then I'm also going to try to then transition over and show you a few other ways, or as many as I can, ways of how you can utilize PowerPoint with Camtasia. Now, the idea isn't for you to utilize every single one of these. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's kind of introducing you to some different workflows and then you kind of selecting which one works best for you, which one you think is most relevant for your workflow. So there's a lot of information that I want to cover, and do remember that this is being recorded. So if you want to go back and rewatch any parts that you may have not quite grasped or whatever, that recording will be coming to you tomorrow. So let's start here inside of Camtasia. And this is just a blank project. And now when I record PowerPoint, I'm going to show you how to use the Camtasia recorder to actually record it. So I'm going to click on this record button up here, and this is going to launch the Camtasia recorder. Let me move this over here in the middle. So I typically will record my entire screen, and then I will launch the PowerPoint presentation to fill the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and select this screen one here. I'm also going to do webcam, and I'm going to show you that oftentimes I don't necessarily leave the webcam on the entire time during the produced video, but I'm going to go ahead and turn on my webcam here. And so you should see me now in this little preview window. And this is going to, I'm going to show you how to record with webcam, how you can hide it with some animations. And then if you want to bring it back in your video later, you definitely can. For my microphone, I'm going to select my Yeti X microphone. That's the one I'm using for this webinar today. And I don't necessarily have any system audio, so I'm going to leave that one as it is. Now, with my recorder kind of set up, I'm going to open up PowerPoint now. And these are some slides that I'm going to use for the demonstration today. Now, you guys obviously have your own PowerPoint decks that you create. Some of them are probably more than 5 slides long, but this is, again, just for demonstration purposes. And I'm not going to go through and do a full detailed PowerPoint recording. I'm going to go through each slide and probably talk a little bit about each one just so that we have something on the timeline. But just kind of bear with me as we go through this recording. And then when we get it into the editor, I'll kind of walk you through that process. Okay. So again, I'm going to use my my Camtasia recorder here. So I'm actually going to launch PowerPoint to start in full screen mode. So it fills my screen. And then take my deep breath. And I'm going to start off with webcam on, and I'm going to be talking to the webcam to start off, and then we'll go through a few of the slides. So I'm actually going to drag this over to my other monitor just so that it's not distracting me on top of the slides. I'm going to hit record, 3-second countdown, and then I'll go through a few slides. Hi, and welcome to this presentation today on best practices when working with audio and video. I'm Ryan, and I'm going to share a few tips with you. So let's get started. First of all, I'd like to start off with project preparation. So having a clear plan is definitely important when you are having your end goals in mind before you start recording. A clean workspace is also important. This illustration over here kind of shows a Windows tip that if you right-click on the desktop of your Windows machine and go to the View menu, and you can actually uncheck Show Desktop Icons, and this will hide everything on your desktop so that it's not shown inside your video recording. A third tip is to turn off your notifications, things like email, chat, Slack, things like that. And also be aware of your phone and make sure that's in silence mode. Microphones in your voice. So audio is extremely important in your videos. We do recommend a USB headset or desktop mic, as you see kind of pictured here on this slide. And also one of the hardest things is to learn to accept the sound of your own voice. When you hear your voice coming through the speakers, it doesn't always sound quite like you think that's how you sound, but it really is. And just accepting it is the best thing you can do. One final slide here on reducing noise and scripting. So being aware of your surroundings, things like fans, traffic if you're near windows, coworkers, or doors opening and closing. Just being aware of that and trying to minimize as much sound as possible is definitely helpful in the quality of your videos. Scripting is something else that I highly recommend. It helps me at least get my thoughts out on paper so that I know exactly what I'm going to say. There are people like Jason who really do well with the off-the-cuff style, hitting record and just talking through, but it's really just a personal preference and sometimes just depends on the particular video. So I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to start over. I hope you found this helpful, and thanks a lot for watching. All right, so I did hit the stop button, and you guys probably heard me say I'm going to start over. That's just kind of actually a tip that if you do mess up, I usually don't say I'm going to start over, but I'll usually just pause for a few seconds, and then I'll pick up right where I left before I made that mistake. Because when I get in here to the editor, I know that I can come down here and I can remove that part and like it was never there. So I'll actually do that here in a second. But I wanted to point that out, that's kind of a tip while you're recording. If you do mess up, it took me a while. I usually just start all over again, delete the recording and start over. But you kind of can learn some tips along the way of turning or just pausing and starting back and kind of fixing it in the editor, so to speak. All right, so that's the first step. We recorded our screen. Now it's in the editor here. It has track 1 is my screen recording. So that's everything that was captured in the slides. Track 2 down here has audio as well as my camera video. And those two are connected. First thing first, though, when I come up here to the top, this is an untitled project. I will typically come to my file menu and I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to take this into, I've got a webinars folder. I'm just going to call this one Camtasia PowerPoint demo. And here's a new feature in 2021 of Camtasia. This is checkbox, and this is new on the Windows side, creating a standalone project. This is something you could already do on the Mac side, but having this box checked is extremely nice because now when I hit save, it's going to save this project inside of basically a folder. And as I add new media or import new media here into my media bin, it's automatically going to put that media inside of that TechSmith project folder. So we'll try and show you what that looks like in a little bit. But now that it's saved, we're good to go. So now I like to go down and start doing some editing. Now, typically at the beginning, I may have a little bit that I want to delete to get started. This one actually started pretty good, but let me just hit the play button here and listen to the first few seconds. Hi, and welcome to this presentation today on best practices when working with audio. All right, so I think there could be an opportunity there to delete maybe a couple seconds at the beginning. And I generally look at my audio waveform, which is a little hard to see, but about right here, I think I am going to make a selection at the back, and I'm going to hit this cut button with the scissors, and it's going to remove that. So now my beginning starts about a second sooner. And I'll probably do that at the end too, when I wanted to cut that part out. But one of the things I tend to do is start at the left and kind of work my way through this. And one of them is, being that the camera video is separate from the screen video, I'm actually going to resize this a little bit and move it over here. Another cool little feature that I'd like to do is I come up here at the top of the canvas, there is a crop button. And you can also hold down the Alt key to temporarily turn it on. But if you click on the crop button, with whatever media is selected down here, it puts this blue line around it. And if I want to crop out this side, and maybe I want to crop out this side a little bit, and I can adjust this so that it's not showing everything that I captured with my webcam. So once I can still move this around, but with it still in crop mode, if I want to go back to resizing it, I need to come back over here and click on the arrow to the edit mode. And now this lets me actually resize this and position it wherever I want. So maybe I want to have this a little bit bigger down here in the corner. And there's also a cool little effect that we've added inside of the visual effects menu over on the left, which is this corner rounding. And if I click and drag this corner rounding effect and drop it on top of my webcam, over here underneath this properties window, you're going to see this corner rounding section. And I'm going to grab this radius and start dragging it up. And you're going to see that it puts this nice little rounded effect around it. And you can almost, depending on if it's a perfect square or not, when you crop it, you can turn it into like a perfect circle. But there are some really cool things you can do here. You can actually deselect, and maybe you only want it to have 3 sides rounded, but you can kind of adjust that how you want. And then you can adjust the radius here. So this is actually kind of a cool effect. Another thing I like to do is add like a drop shadow on it. So I'm going to drop that over here, and I can adjust what that drop shadow effect looks like as well. Something else up here, if you want to see what it looks like without the corner rounding, we have these little toggle switches under properties. So I can just turn it off, and that's what it looks like with it having a drop shadow with just the rectangle, or toggle it back on to see what that looks like. So I think I have my webcam where I want it to start. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fast forward this. And so I'm kind of doing the introduction right now. And then I say something like, let's get started. So let me play this last part. I'm Ryan, and I'm going to share a few tips with you. So let's get started. Okay, so now I have this little, I'm not sure what this little blurb is right here. Let me play it. Oh, it's my lips smacking. Great. So I want to get rid of that, obviously. So let me make a selection on it. And with it selected, I'm going to choose my audio up here. Now, there's multiple ways I can do this. I can, with this selected area, I can hover over the selected audio, click and drag it down and mute it. So now that is gone. I can double click here, and that's completely gone, and you won't hear that anymore. You could also, I could have, let me undo this, and I can make a selection again. And instead of just silencing it, if I don't need that part, I could just use the scissors and cut, and now that's gone. Okay, so it really kind of depends on the piece of media you're working with. But that's a couple ways of how I typically silence things or just remove it. Another thing I want to do is get myself out of the way. So if I recorded with my webcam, right around here, I am going to add an animation. And there's zoom and pan, and then there's also the animations tab. I'm going to go with the animations tab, drag down this custom animation on top of the webcam. And with it selected, I could either move it up to the corner, or what I'm going to do is select the video options over here, and I'm going to change the opacity to 0. So it's going to basically remove me from the screen, and it's going to then look something like this when it gets to that point. So let's get started. First of all, I'd like to start off with Project preparation. Okay, so that's one tip that I like to do is having that webcam is kind of nice to do the introduction, but sometimes it can be distracting if it's on the screen the entire time. Not sure the viewer knows what they're supposed to look at, the screen content or the viewer. And I could bring myself back anytime I want with another animation. So let me actually come back to this ending. And when I come up and say thanks for watching, let's actually edit that part out here. So let me hit play. So I hope you found this helpful. I'm gonna start over. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of that part. So I'm gonna highlight it. I'm gonna cut it out and it's gone. So now when I personal preference, and sometimes just depends on the particular video. I hope you found this helpful. All right, so when I come back here, I'm going to add another custom animation. And at this point, I'm going to bring myself back and I'm going to move myself up here to the top. And I can even make it a little bit bigger if I wanted to. It's really kind of up to you. And so what this looks like then with that animation, just a personal preference, and sometimes just depends on the particular video. I hope you found this helpful. All right, so there you go. So there's a couple animations that you can add to kind of show yourself and hide yourself throughout the video. Now, there's other things that you can do, obviously, with the editing tools. You can go through and add annotations. A lot of times I'll add some callouts or maybe some arrows or shapes around things as I'm talking about them, because generally when you're recording PowerPoint, the slides tend to be static. Or sometimes, if you do have animations that's actually being recorded. I'm going to show you one more little tip here, and then I'll take some questions. So like right here on this slide, when I talk about having a clear plan, let me actually play this 1 second. Project preparation. So having a clear plan. So right there, when I talk about having a clear plan, I'm going to come into my annotations and I'm going to use the sketch motion feature here. So I'm going to drag this rectangle over here and I'm going to place this around, and I need to move my playhead over a little bit so you can see the whole thing. I'm going to place this around that first bullet point. And if I don't like that red color, I can come over here to my properties. I'm going to use maybe this Camtasia green. Sounds good. And now what's going to happen is when I talk about it, this is going to come up on my screen so that it can help focus the viewer's eyes on that area. But now a cool little feature here, I'm going to drag this out so that it's on my screen a little bit longer. And this will now stay on there this whole time. But what I want to do is when I talk about clean workspace, I'm going to add an animation and move this down to cover that up. So let's find the audio where I talk about clean workspace. So let me hit play. Recording. A clean workspace is also important. All right, so right here's that audio. I'm going to come to my animations and drag down a custom animation, and you can put animations on all types of media. So I'm going to put this one on the sketch motion call out, and it being a custom one, it's just blank. But at this point in my video, I want this call out here to move down and cover up or highlight clean workspace. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit, and this is what it's going to look like when it gets to that part. So let me hit play. Having your end goals in mind before you start recording. A clean workspace is also important. All right, hopefully the playback is decent and you can actually see that moving. It sometimes is a little hard to show demoing things like this in Camtasia through a Zoom webinar, but hopefully you get the idea. And then obviously the next one is turning off notifications. I think that's about right here. A third tip is notifications. So let me add another custom animation there. With it selected, again, I'm going to reposition it around this one. And it's just my goal here is to kind of help guide viewers so that when I'm talking about it, there's a little bit of movement and action on the screen. So let me play that one back up so that it's not shown inside your video recording. A third tip is to turn off your notifications. All right, so there's a couple tips again by adding in these. Another one is these need some transitions, I think. So I'm going to click on my transitions. Otherwise, it's just going to, when it gets to the end, it's just going to disappear. But let me come over to my transitions, and we have a ton of transitions to choose from. We've categorized them, as you can see, by type. And I tend to like just the fades. So I'm just going to use the common fade one here. I'm going to drag this down, and I can put these wherever the yellow highlight is. I can put it at just the beginning. I can put it at the end. And since this is a sketch motion, it'll actually draw on the screen. So I'm only going to put this at the end of the video. So instead of it just abruptly stopping, it's going to then just kind of fade out. All right. So there's more I could definitely do. I could go through and cut out more things. I can edit the audio if I needed to, but I'm going to pretend like it's done and I've got my video ready to share. So to do that, I'm going to come up to the export menu. I know a lot of you during the poll question, you tend to go to Vimeo or YouTube, as well as some other outputs that we have available. If you like to export this to to another service that we don't actually have a direct output to, then you can typically just do a local file and go through and produce out an MP4 video. And then you can then upload it manually to whichever service you like to use. I'm going to actually, if you click on export and go to YouTube, I think I'm already signed in, and then you can choose here if you want it to be public, private, or unlisted, as well as giving it a title, description, tags, and so forth. This little feature down here, create table of contents from markers. I'm actually going to show you that because that can be extremely helpful. So I'm going to cancel this. And markers are nice when you come to a new slide. So when it comes to this new slide, project preparation, I'm going to add a marker there. So right about at that location, I am going to, I can either do it a couple ways. I believe it's Shift M is the hotkey. Shift M will add a marker at that location. And I'm going to type right up here in this corner in the above properties. I'm going to type in a title for this one. So I'll type in project preparation, and that adds a marker at that spot. And I can put markers wherever I want. So I'm going to go find the next slide, microphones and your voice. And I can either, with this markers tab open, I can click on this little plus button right here and it's going to add it, or I could do the Shift M, and I'm going to call this one microphones and your voice. And I want to do two more. So let me find the reduced noise and scripting. I'll add one here. And the last one is just kind of the thanks for watching. So let me find that slide. And I'm going to add another one. And I'm just going to say thanks for watching. Now, another little tip about the markers. This track right here, every now and then, if it's open, I accidentally click and I add a marker and I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I can right click on top of it and delete it. But a tip is that over here on the left-hand side where markers is open, I can click this little button here and it's going to hide that marker track. Now I don't accidentally click and add a marker, but it shows me where those markers are located. Okay. Now, if I come up here to export and I say YouTube, it's going to give me that option to create a table of contents from markers. I can give it a different name if it went and so forth. But when I click finish, it's going to render out this video and it's going to upload it to my YouTube account. Now, this is kind of a little bit of a cooking show style. I've already done this to kind of show you what that looks like. So let me open up. Here is my YouTube channel. And this is what it looks like with that table of contents. It actually puts it in the about box or the show more at the bottom below the video. And it puts timestamps of wherever those markers were added inside of Camtasia. And also, if I hover up here, you see these little chunks on the play bar that shows that's the microphones in your voice section. This is the reduced noise and scripting. So this can be extremely helpful for people to kind of navigate around your video. Okay. Oh man, I've been talking a lot, Jason, and I haven't even paused to see if there's any questions. So how about I do that right now?
Sure, Ryan, why don't you take a deep breath and grab a sip of water and prepare thyself.
Okay, sounds good.
We've definitely had questions coming in, and we appreciate those questions. Keep them coming. We're getting to them as many as we can. Let's start right back at the beginning, Ryan, with your recording. If you can pull up the editor. Right now, we're just seeing your wallpaper. There we go. So the first question that came in that was relevant, Darla asked, when you brought in your recording, when you stopped your recording, how did your recording automatically record onto 2 tracks? When I do it, it's always embedded together. So I think she's referring to your screen on one track and your webcam and audio on a second track. She's only seeing 1 track.
Yep, that is very common. And it's only because I recorded with my webcam turned on. So if I would have recorded, if I open up the recorder again, actually, let's move it over here. If I would have recorded with this webcam turned off, then what it would have done was it would have recorded my screen and my microphone audio, and those 2 would have come in on track 1 together. So when I record with webcam, it puts the webcam and audio together, and it puts the screen recording. And if you had system audio on, it would be down here with the screen recording.
There we go.
Yeah, and if you wanted to separate these, if you wanted the audio separated, if I right click on top of this camera clip here, one of the options is separate audio and video. So when I do that, it's going to put my audio here on track 3. It's going to be putting track 2 as my camera video and track 1 is my screen recording video.
And one thing that definitely helps. And one thing to note, as Ryan kind of mentioned, if you separate your audio and video as he showed, and you leave your face on the screen, your webcam on, you have to be careful with your edits because sometimes you can make adjustments where your audio and your video no longer sync up because of adjustments you've made. So if that's a concern, be aware of that. So
exactly.
Thanks for that, Ryan. We got a ton of them. I'm going to give a couple of them here because I know you got more content. Jolene and Sherry asked a version of the same question. And that is they record their PowerPoint presentations with dual monitors. One screen has the presentation. The other one has their presenter mode with their notes and stuff like that. The real reason they were here today is to find out best practices for recording PowerPoints in 2 monitor setups when you've got presenter on one side and the actual presentation on another.
So I'm assuming here under slideshow, they're turning on this use presenter view, which will basically put on a separate screen or on a separate monitor. It'll show what slide is coming up. It will also show any notes that they may have. So that's definitely possible. And I could have done that as well. The key, I think, is showing right up here is what monitor do you want the actual slides in presentation mode to go on to? And then when you have your Camtasia recorder open, you're going to choose the screen. Like I have 3 different monitors right now, and I would want to make sure I choose the screen that's going to show the presentation and not the presenter view. So that would be I think that's answering their question, but or if not, can you clarify it a little more?
Nope, I think that is, and I think that you may have just showed something that people may not have discovered, which is that drop-down monitor selection tool, even within PowerPoint. So we appreciate you showing that. There's a ton of questions, Ryan, that have come in, and I know this wasn't the focus of this version of this webinar, but people are asking, specifically Kristen, excuse me, that's not correct. Sarah asked, I noticed that the presentation you used, the PowerPoint you used, did not have any animations in it, but her issue is that when she's tried to record, the animations don't show up. Do you have any thoughts on that? Which also leads to, there's so many people that are asking about why do it your way and not necessarily using the plugin that some people are familiar with. And maybe talk about the light differences between the two.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a great questions. As far as the animations, why they are not showing up, I am not 100% sure why that wouldn't. Like if I would have had these coming in, I don't know how I would do it. Just do maybe a fade in. And so now these would kind of fade in one at a time right there. These should, when I'm doing my recording in full screen, let me do this again. So now they kind of fade in this way, though that should be recorded live with the Camtasia recorder. So I'm not 100% sure how to answer why that's not doing that. Maybe our tech support team might be able to assist with that. The great question on why use the Camtasia desktop recorder and not inside of PowerPoint. Some of you might be familiar with this add-ins tab, that when you install Camtasia, it actually prompts you to install the Camtasia recorder inside as the add-ins tab. This is definitely one way I was going to talk about today for another option for you guys to use. I'm going to kind of walk you through a couple scenarios here. With this add-ins recorder, this is separate from this desktop recorder. So my settings inside of here, if I come over here to this options menu and open that up, I would set up my options separately here. Then they were not going to necessarily copy over what I have selected in this recorder. For example, this one has my Yeti X microphone selected. Over here, it defaults to my webcam. So I would need to basically set up my sections here how I want. There are some definite advantages to this. Whereas I showed you how to add markers on the editor manually. When you record with the Camtasia add-in, when you go from slide to slide, the Camtasia add-in recorder puts a mark there, and it actually puts the markers in for you. So it's a personal preference. If you really like the results of what you get with the add-in toolbar, definitely don't change it on just because I'm using this one. It's just kind of showing you another option, but it's definitely possible to use one or the other or both depending on your situation.
I got some clarification, Ryan. Everything you said is 100% correct. I think people are also utilizing Camtasia's ability to import the PowerPoint slide deck as individual slides. Yep. And those are coming in as static images by design, and there are no animations on those. So Ryan's definitely going through his workflow for a recommended way of doing PowerPoint, but it's not the only way of doing PowerPoint with Camtasia. So thank you for that, Ryan. Yep. Let's go with one more question, and then we'll save the rest for later on. Kristen's asking, what tips do you have for recording PowerPoint presentations that have videos in them? Is it just to make sure you record system audio? Is there anything else we should worry about?
Good question. I think so. Making sure this button here, when you're recording, is system audio turned on, because that's going to take any audio that's being played back through your speakers that will be recorded and put on the timeline. So I don't know if I really have any other tips. If you have them embedded into your PowerPoint slides, I don't know. Jason, do you have any tips there? I don't think
no. I think you got it. I think you also want to consider if there is volume associated with the videos, then that's important. There's always the possibility of replacing a video with an animated GIF, which will also play in loop form when you present as well. So definitely some options there. Definitely some options.
One thing I was thinking of while you were talking, thank you, is if you don't want to embed that video inside of the PowerPoint slide, what you do is just record that slide without it. And then what you could do is inside the Camtasia editor, if you could import that video separately, and then you could drag it down to your timeline and position it as a separate piece of media on that slide, so that when you're editing your video, it would play back. Hopefully that's making sense. So that it would basically, you're not recording it with Camtasia, you're bringing that video clip in separately and putting it on the timeline and positioning it where you want it to play back as an option.
Excellent. So we've got several more questions, Ryan, but I think we're going to have you go through some more of your presentation. And then if we have time, we will have time. We'll add some more questions at the end, but it's possible you might answer a few as you go.
Great. Thanks for all the questions. Yes, there's some other things. I'm going to go ahead and start a new project, file new project here, and show you another tip here that I've used before. And that's again, this is if I don't necessarily have, let's see, animations in my slides and things like that. But what I would do is, if I use notes down here, and I basically have my script down below, what I would do is if I use my Camtasia recorder, I would position and create the size of my slide here. And then I'm going to, instead of doing full screen recording, I'm going to select choose region. Whoops, I did that really fast. Let me actually escape out of that. Underneath this, I'm going to choose this choose region option. And this is going to give me these crosshairs. And I'm going to click and drag and select just the slide area. And I can reposition this and adjust the placement of it. Now, obviously, I'm not on my first slide over here, but there we go. Now, what I would do is I can now, this is the only area that's going to be recorded. And my microphone is on, and I can then use this down here as my script. So maybe I want to do webcam, maybe I don't. But let me just hit record here, and I won't do all of the slides, but I'll just kind of show you what this looks like. So it gives me that 3-second countdown. Hi, and welcome to this presentation on best practices when working with audio and video. I'm Ryan, and I'm going to share some tips with you. So let's get started. Let's begin with project preparation. And I'll kind of stop there as far as going through the script. But I'm navigating over here using these thumbnails. I have my script right here that I can read through. I can point with my cursor, and that's going to be recorded. I can then go from slide to slide or jump around if I need to. And then when I'm done, I can come up here and click stop. And this is going to then take it right into the Camtasia editor. And that question earlier about why don't I get 2 tracks? That's because I did not record with webcam this time, and I only recorded my screen and audio. So now it's putting them together on track 1. So you can see here in my canvas is all you saw was that slide that I was recording. And as I navigated from one to the other, I had my script right below that I was kind of reading through, and I have my video, and I could do edits just like before. This does not automatically put in your markers. You would have to do that manually if you like the markers. And again, this is just one other way how you can record with the Camtasia recorder. Now, somebody also referenced earlier, I'm not going to save this one. I'm going to just say new project. Referenced earlier how you can import slides straight from PowerPoint in here. And that is definitely another option. This is a great new, it's fairly new, being able for Camtasia to take straight PowerPoint PPT or PPTX files, being able to import them here into the media bin. There's multiple ways of doing this. My favorite is to take that PowerPoint, open it up on the folder, and then drag and drop it right here on the media bin. And it's now going to take each of those slides in the presentation and drop them here in order 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, these are static images because these are like PNG files. If there were animations, these are not going to come into these slides. What I could then do is drag these down to my timeline. And since they're images, I can adjust them by hovering over the end as long as I want. So if I have audio, maybe I recorded my audio separately, I could bring my audio in down here and sync it up just like it goes with each slide. So let me actually undo, let me undo that and take that away. There's a feature, voice narration. I'm not sure how many of you, if you've known about this or if you've used it, but voice narration allows you to actually paste in a script here and do your voice recording. So this is something that I actually did a little bit ago, and I'll show you what that looks like. So this is a voice narration example where I imported the slides. So you can see, just like that previous one I did, here are the 5 slides that I just imported in. And then down here, I have individual audio that I recorded. And so here under voice narration, I have a script, and let me open it up so you can see it. Here is my script. This is basically taken right from my PowerPoint notes. And I have my script here. I just copied this, came over here into my voice narration and pasted it in. And now I have my script right here that I can record my audio and go ahead and sync everything up. Okay. Let me see. I really kind of want to demo this for you. So let me, this is kind of an end project right here. So, and how I did it was I recorded my audio clips in chunks. So I recorded this one and then I stopped it and saved it. And then I recorded the next one. I don't have to do them in chunks, but it just makes it a little bit easier for me. And you can just record the whole thing in just one clip if you wanted to. But let me actually show you that workflow, how to get to this point. So I'm going to come back. Sorry for all the jumping around here, but I'm going to import those slides. And this is another way of just clicking import media, selecting that PowerPoint deck, and the slides come in. Okay. Voice narration. Let me go get that script and I'll show you. I'm going to click there. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click down here so it selects all of my voice narration. Control C and copy it. And then over here, I'm going to just paste it right into my voice narration area. And these extra spaces are where my new slides are. So I'm now going to record this, and I don't have to paste it in here. I could have that script open up on another monitor that I'm reading from and things like that. So this is just kind of a personal preference again. So I've got my microphone selected, and all I'm going to do is record this first piece of audio. And you know what? I'm going to, before I do that, this is an untitled project. Let me do a save as real quick, and I'll show you what this, how cool this is. I'm going to call this one voice narration demo, Camtasia, and PowerPoint. All right. And it's going to be a standalone project. All right. So save. Okay. I think I'm ready. So I'm going to hit record, and I'm going to just record this first part. Hi, and welcome to this presentation on best practices when working with audio and video. I'm Ryan, and I'm going to share some tips with you. So let's get started. So I clicked stop. It brings in the title of my project with the number 1 at the end of it. I'm going to do something just calling it audio 1, and I'm going to hit save because it automatically defaults to that standalone project that I just created. So I'm going to hit save. It puts that audio down here on track 1. If I come over here to my media bin, there's that audio file. It automatically puts it here. And if I come back to voice narration, I'm ready for this next one. And this one's a little bit longer. So let me actually, I'm just going to record the first part of it just to kind of show you so we don't have to spend too much time on this. You get the idea. But let me just record this first part. Let's begin with project preparation. It might sound obvious, but making sure you have a clear plan of what you're creating is extremely important. You will want to have your end goals in mind before you begin, or you might be spending a lot of time redoing your work or making changes later. I'll hit stop. I'll call this one audio 2. And again, it's going to put it right in that same place. And it puts it wherever my playhead was. So I can move this down on that track. I can even position my playhead after it if I want to, and I can go ahead with recording my next one. Now, again, I could do all of it in one swoop if I wanted to. It's really kind of a personal preference there. But then the cool thing here is once I do all my recordings and they're all lined up, I can go back to my media bin and I can drag down my first slide. I can drag this out so that it matches up with that audio. I can drag down the second one, and I can position it so that everything is kind of now in sync. And that's one of the reasons why I like doing it in the chunks, audio chunks, is so that I can then know pretty easily on how to line things up. So again, this is another option. If you do bring in your slides, you have this voice narration, or maybe you use another tool to record your audio. You can bring in that audio and then sync things up down here on the timeline. All right, I'm going to pause again. We have about 10, 11 minutes. Jason, are there any other questions at this point?
Yes, there are, Ryan. Actually, you just answered one that Katie was kind of asking, and that was, if you move the slides around or you move the sections around, can you move the audio? She called them chunks. I think that's the best term ever. Audio chunks around. And that's exactly what you were kind of showing, right? You can slide them around. You can create space to add inserts. But yeah, as long as you record them in these individual chunks like you were showing, that's not a problem.
Correct. And that's the one difference between audio and video, is that video is visual. So if I drag this over, then when it gets to the end of this one, they're going to see a blank screen here. So with audio, though, it's just silence. They won't know that it's not there.
Right. So a lot of the questions we have coming in of the hundreds that have come in are a little bit things that you showed earlier, but some that you might be able to show right now. Felicia just asked, could you show how you would add a transition between those slides that you have right there? You've got two that are kind of bumping into each other. How would you add a transition?
Yep, great question. And I was, let me actually add more media down here because I'll show you another tip on adding transitions. So let me add all 5 slides. And to add, when you're finished and you have all your audio and you're recording everything's together, if you go to transitions, if you find the ones that you like, or maybe if I already favorited this fade one, maybe I like fade through, or maybe this flare. If I click the star, I can find it in my favorites tab up here. But either way, transitions, I can drag down and place them. If I go into the middle of the clip, you can see it highlights both edges. If I go to the beginning, it'll only do that one. If I go over here, it will only do that one. But here's the little tip. If you want to use the same transition on all of them, I'm going to click and drag my mouse here and select all 5 of my pieces of, or slides here, my pieces of media. I can then either drag this down, or if I right click on top of fade, it says add to selected media. And if I do that, it's going to place that fade transition on every single one of them, so I don't have to drag them down individually on those. So again, selecting all of them and then right clicking on this transition you want, add to selected media. Now it did add it at the beginning of this one too. So if you don't want your video to start off like this, hi and welcome. If you don't want that transition there, then I can easily just, I might have to zoom in a little bit to stretch it out. But if I click and select just that transition, I can right click on it and delete it, or just hit the delete key on my keyboard. And now that particular transition's gone. Or if I want to replace this one with flare 2, I just drag this down and drop it on top of it, and it will only replace that first one there with a flare transition. Does that help?
That helps. Yeah, transition's super powerful. Absolutely. Ryan, I know you've done a lot of things that prep us for this. I'm going to ask it. Sorry, but it's a lot of questions coming in about the captioning capabilities within Camtasia itself. So you've already talked about scripting. You've talked about syncing things up. People are wondering about speech to text and all that. If you could give an elevator pitch about the captioning capability, and then we'll move on to a couple more questions as we are nearly out of time already.
Yes, definitely. So if you do script, it will really help you with the captioning aspect. And it's going to be slightly different from Windows to Mac here. On the Windows side of things, if it's not showing up here, if you click on more, click on captions, you're going to see this captions window or menu. At the very top, there's some different options where you can import captions. So that's if you have like an SRT file, or maybe a translation service sent you some captioning, you could import them. Speech to text, this is only a Windows feature. That if I click that, it will actually look at all of the audio on my timeline, and through the Windows text generation or whatever, I'm not sure what the correct terminology is here, but the Windows feature will transcribe it from the audio to text. And it's not perfect by any means. You will have to go through and do some editing along the way. If you do have, I'm going to hit cancel there. If you do have that script, which if I come over here to my narration, here's my script. So let me actually copy that. And if I come back to captions, I'm going to say add a caption, and I'm going to Control V and paste that script in here. And this is where, if I click on this button, it's going to say sync captions. And what this will do is when I click on sync captions, it will allow me to click continue, and then it's going to play back my video while I'm reading along with the captions up here. And when it gets to a word, when it says like I'm Ryan, I can click on that and it's going to make a new caption down here. So let me actually do just a couple sentences and then we'll point you to a tutorial. So let me hit continue. Hi, and welcome to this presentation on best practices when working with audio and video. I'm Ryan, and I'm going to share some tips with you, so let's get started. Let's begin with project preparation. It might sound obvious, but making sure you have a... All right, I'll stop that right there. So you get the idea as I'm kind of just watching the video play back. I'm listening to the text, and I'm clicking on a word when I want it to become a new start of a new caption point. We have a tutorial for this that I actually did for the new release of Camtasia of syncing with a script. So we can actually send that to you so that you can actually watch that, or you can find it on our tutorial, or maybe on YouTube or our tutorial page, both of them maybe.
All the places.
All the places. So hopefully that helps a little bit. We also, man, I could go on forever on this, but I'll stop right there and see. maybe add more later.
So we've got time, I think, Ryan, for one more question. We had a lot of questions about the initial video you were working on, but we'll stay with this one here. Question that Dan asks, do you have any recommendations about pre-recorded presentations, things they did in previous semesters? Is it still okay to take those recordings from previous sessions and bring them into Camtasia and either edit them separately, change them out, or add them to new slides as that MP4 is brought in?
Yes, that's a great question because that happens a lot when you are reusing content that you've recorded and a new semester comes along and you need to change some things. There's obviously multiple ways of being able to swap that out, whether you just record, if you just open up the PowerPoint, and maybe it was this slide that had some changes to it, and you just hit record and record that portion with your new audio and then let me actually do something here. Sorry, let me do a new project. Sure. So this is the one I think I did where I actually recorded the PowerPoint the whole way. So if I needed to change a slide out, maybe this one here, I would try to record it in the same dimensions as before. So I would want to do this one at full screen. I could launch this so that it's on the screen. Oh, and this has the transitions in it. Let's choose a different slide. Let's do this one. And I would hit record. I'll just do this real quick. Hey there, I'm going to talk about microphones and your voice. I'm actually doing this for a demonstration. So I would maybe change out some things if maybe the microphones, the new ones that you recommended might be different or something like that. I'm going to hit stop. It's going to bring that recording into my media bin. I would find that part on my slide over here, and I would just drag this down to replace it. So this is going to have my new audio and my new video. I would then highlight the one that was there and remove that, delete it. So let me actually try that. Let me hit cut. And now I have my, whoops, let me undo that.
You could also just silence that part, right, Ryan?
Yeah, that's true. I could just silence that part, that audio. But that's just one option, obviously, is basically re-recording it, bringing it in, removing what was there and adding that part. One thing that happens when you have your PowerPoint slides and you're bringing them in individually, that makes it really nice is that if you just change some text on here, you can do a file save as and save out the slide as a PNG file. And it will save just that slide or all of them. And if it's just one that you wanted to replace, then you would import that in, and then you could just swap it out with the one that was there. So again, multiple ways of doing it, and I'm not sure how helpful I was in answering that. So any other questions, Jason?
I think, Ryan, we're going to wrap it. We've gotten to just about every question that came in. So if you'd be willing to bring up that closing slide, we'll go through the last little bit here.
You bet.
So we want to definitely say thank you for attending today. Now, don't forget, you will get an email within the next day, a recording webinar. Wow, a recording of the webinar that you can watch, you could share. We also, in that email, have links to the handouts for Camtasia, link to our tech support team. Remember, if you have a license of Camtasia, you do have access to our tech support team. And please, if you have a moment when the webinar finishes and you close out, please take the minute to complete the short survey. Gives us great information, gives us great feedback on how we did, what we could do better. And if you have ideas or topic requests for future webinars, we're happy to listen to those as well. So my thanks to you, Ryan, and everybody else. Ryan, you got anything else you'd like to add?
Just a thank you. Thank you for attending. Hopefully I gave you some tips, or at least something that you could take away and try with Camtasia and PowerPoint. So again, thanks a lot, and I look forward to seeing your feedback.
Excellent. Have a wonderful day, everyone.